Hi everyone, Nicholas Buffett here from sunny Cyprus and welcome to another video tutorial. This one's all about Excel and it's mainly about moving away from these really boring and bland spreadsheets, especially for educators where we use them for grade books. And we've got the classic test 1, test 2, test 3, the maximum, the minimum, the average grade, so on and so forth. And we're going to convert these grade books into dynamic Excel dashboards. We're going to have charts that will upgrade automatically. We've got a slicer on the other side over there where we can just choose a student name and it will only show that student's information and the charts will change automatically as well. This is really fantastic, especially when you've got parent-teacher consultations and you want to show a parent their child's information without showing the information of other children. This is a fantastic way of doing that. And it will also compare that child's data or results compared to the class average, if that's what you want to do. So enough of that. Let's get started straight away. But before you do, make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, click that button. Okay, so here we have what I think is a basic teacher grade book for students. We can see here my table. My table has got things like student names. I've got the absences, the tests that they've done, for example, Word, Excel, Web Design, the exam, their total. The total is actually weighted, so we can see here the percentages here which are weighted. So the Word exam was 15% of the total, the Excel is 15%, Web Design is 20%, and here we've got the exam is actually worth 50% of the total. So this is actually a weighted total. And here we've got a bonus. We give students bonuses sometimes. So here I'm going to decide that I'm going to give students a bonus if they've got less than 4 absences. Here's my absence column. And if they do, then they're going to get the bonus, which is indicated up here where it says bonus. So whatever value I've got inside I1. And then finally here, well, not finally, but here I've got a grade, a letter grade, which represents their level, shall we say, depending on what their score here is with the bonus. And essentially what it does, it will take this value here where it says bonus, and it will compare it to this column here, find the value which is most appropriate, and then return a letter code from this column here. And that basically gives us like A, B, C, D, and E. At the bottom, I've got my class totals. So I've got the class maximum for the test in Word. So here it tells me that the highest score was 97. I've got the lowest score, which was 25. I've got the class average. So here I found the average of that test, of the Word test. And that's going to give me a good indication of where each student is according to the average of the class. And then finally, I've also got here the difference. What was the spread between the lowest grade and the highest grade? So this is our basic grade book. Now I've got this space up here. You're going to see why later because I'm going to modify this. So let's go see what we're actually going to do today. We're going to modify this so that it looks like this. Now I'm going to remove that. So it's going to look something like this. Now I know this chart over here looks really messy. You can't really read anything of it, but just give me a second. So what do we have? We still got our table here, which has all the information, the same information as we had before. We still got our class totals, averages, maximum, minimum at the bottom. But what we do see different right now is this. We've got this thing here called a slicer. And this is absolutely fantastic because what I can do, I can now select, well, before I show you, if I was to try and show the results, these results to a parent, to show, for example, the results of one student, let's say Jenny here, just so these results, I'll have to either filter everything out or I'll have to freeze frames and then scroll things. And there's always a risk that a parent will see information from another student. Well, now, if I go to my dynamic gradebook here, what I can do, I can simply choose a student. Let's choose Jenny again here. So if I click here, you can see it only shows me Jenny's results here. I can still see the class results, the class averages, the maximum, minimum. So I can see here very quickly, just from here, Word, she got a 58 and the class average was 60. So Jenny here already we can see was for that test, you know, within the average. But even easier to see, we can see this chart here. I've got 2 lines here. It shows Jenny's results, this orange line here, and the class average results. So I can see where Jenny is and her performance across, you know, across the board very easily from this diagram. And I could just choose another student. For example, if I click here on Ernesto Watkins, I can see this student. I'm not even going to look at these values here. I'm just going to look at this chart. Look at this beautiful chart. So basically here, I can see Ernesto here has consistently been below the class average. Now that is a concern. We can see, but he hasn't dropped He's basically stable, but he's always below the average. Let's go have a look at a few more very quickly. Nick White. Now, this would be a concern. He started off strong, and across time, across the board, as he's doing other tests in other areas, his performance is dropping drastically. So he started off above the average, and now he's way below. And can you see how these diagrams very easily can show us this really valuable information? And all you have to do is just click. And we can do this without any coding. So before we can do this, however, I'm going to show you the formulas that I've used to generate this data here. So I'm going to explain a little bit about the formulas. Now, if you know how to use these formulas, by all means, use the timestamps at the bottom to jump ahead. But if you're new to Excel, I'm going to give you a crash course here on the basics of Excel so that you can generate your gradebook up to this point or even further, and then go all the way to create it into a dynamic workbook here. It's not hard, but you do need to understand how the functions work, and you do need to understand a little bit about relative and absolute referencing. So let's get started with that right now. Okay, so let's begin. First of all, Excel contains columns and rows, and the columns have got letters, the rows have got numbers. Now, an intersecting column and a row will basically give you the active cell. So in this case, E4. The active cell is the cell that we're working in currently, and we may be entering information in. Now, think of a cell as a box. So what we need to do is we've got two things that we can basically put inside the box. One's called a constant, the other one's called a variable. A constant essentially basically means if I just delete that number 3, if I type a value in here and press enter, like the number 3, that's known as a constant. And I know it's a constant because that value cannot change unless the user, goes and changes the value in that cell. Also, another way I can tell is if I select this cell, you can see this green outline, and I look up here, this is known as your formula bar up here. I can see that the contents in the formula bar is the same as what I can see in the cell. So it's a constant. The same with this one here. If I select this one, you can see it says 21 in the formula bar up here, but it also says 21 in the cell. A variable basically is able to change automatically. It's called automatic recalculation without you actually changing it because it's dependent upon other variables or other constants or other cells within your spreadsheet or workbook. So this one here, it says 24, but if I look up here, it actually says B3 plus B4 equals B3 plus B4. If I click in the formula bar, it will show me the formula inside the cell value here at the B5, and it will show me in colors the blue and the red. So if I click in here now, I can see that B3 is blue, this is B3, this is B4, it's red, and it's basically saying that this active cell B5 is equivalent, that's what the equal sign means, to the contents of B3 plus the contents of B4. So that means if I change the value inside B4 to, let's say, 25, as soon as I press enter, we're going to see this variable here change to 28. So this changed without me actually changing it manually. I changed this one manually because it's a constant. So that's constants and variables. There are other variables as well, variables which are actually known as functions. Now, functions are basically mathematical calculations that have been given a name to make it easier for us to understand what they do. So if we take the function average, what does that do? Well, when we want to calculate the average of something, we take all the numbers, add them together, and then divide by the number of numbers that we use to add together. So that process that we followed is actually known as the function, and we call it average. Well, Excel does the same thing. So we need to know the name of the function, but we also need to know the parameters that the function will need so that it can actually carry out that function. So in the case of the average, you can't calculate the average of anything unless somebody gives you the numbers you're going to use to do the average on. And it's the same with Excel. So here I'm going to do, and here's a classic mistake that most people don't understand. I'm going to start, let's say, a sum function. I'm going to do equals to sum. I'm going to open brackets, and I'm going to select the two numbers, these two here, by clicking and dragging. So I'm going to add all the numbers which are contained in the cells B3 to B4 in that range, close the brackets, and then I'm going to press enter. But before I do, what does this equal sign here mean? Now, most people think that you have to start a function with an equal sign. That's not true. Let me just press enter here. What the equal sign essentially means is this. If we take the mathematical calculation, let's say 5 equals to 2 plus 3, the process, or the purpose, should I say, of the equal sign is to say that whatever's on the left-hand side is equivalent to whatever is on the right-hand side of that equal sign. So here we're saying that the number 5 is equivalent to 2 plus 3. Well, that's fine, because in our function here, we know what's on the right-hand side. It's listed here, sum brackets B3 range to B4 close the brackets. But what's on the left-hand side? Well, on the left-hand side is actually the cell which we put in the answer in. So we're putting the answer, we're putting this function in the cell B8. So this actually is, when we put the equal sign in this one, we're actually saying B8 equals to the sum of, what is it, B3 range to B4. So what's on the left-hand side is the name of the active cell. Okay, so that's why we use the equals. And I say this because sometimes you need to put a function inside the function, and most people, they end up putting an equal sign inside the nested function, and that is wrong. Okay, so let's just get rid of this. Now, the next thing we're going to have a look at now is we're going to see the function max, min, and average. These are very basic, exactly the same thing. I'm just going to do equals to max. That's the name of the function. I'm going to open brackets to put my parameters in. My parameters is basically this range here. If I wanted to add another number in here, I can just press, let's say, comma 50. And that's going to include the number 50. So it's going to add the contents of B3 and B4 and the 50 and divide by 3. And here I'm going to do equals to min. It's going to give me the minimum number. So if I do the minimum number on this range here, close the brackets and press enter, that's going to be 3. And here we're going to do the average equals to average. So these are functions we're going to use in our gradebook. I'm going to select these two. I'm going to select these 3 numbers. I'm also going to add the number, say 43. Okay, so it's going to use all those numbers. And the average is 22.75. Okay, so that's constants, variables, and functions. Let's have a look at now what absolute or relative and absolute references are. So in this table here, I'll zoom that in a little bit more. Okay, if I want to multiply this number with this number, and I do this, equals to, so I'm saying C18 equals to A18 multiplied by B18. And if I do that, that's absolutely fine. Now, if you notice, when I select this cell, in the bottom right corner, I've got this little green square. That's known as my fill handle. Some people call it the drag handle. It's actually a fill handle. And as soon as I put my mouse over it, you can see it turns into that little crosshair there. Okay? And I can click on that and drag it down. I can also double click, but like in Excel and every other application, there's 100 ways to do a different thing. Okay, so how does it know? How do I know what it's done here? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to click on this third one, and I'm going to click in this formula bar to see what it's using. And look at that. It's automatically detected that I'm going to be adding these 2 numbers for the cell, the corresponding cell here, C20. How does it do that? Well, it does this because when I select here my functions A18, my cells A18 and B18 to multiply them together, it doesn't actually see the cell A18 or the cell B18. What it does, it finds the relative path from the cell which I'm in. So I'm currently in C18, and it says get the contents of A18. So to get to A18 from here, I'm going to go 1, 2 to the left. And I'm going to multiply that with whatever is 1 to the left, which is B18, from this cell, from the cell C18. So it's a relative path. I'm just going to cancel that so I can just show you here with the inking. So when I'm going to do A18 times B18, it actually copies this. 2 to the left, oh, let's just get my pen, 2 to the left multiplied by 1 to the left. And let's just keep that in mind now. So when I copy this down from here to here, what it actually copies is this command here. 2 to the left times 1 to the left. And 2 to the left now from this active cell is 1, 2, which is 37, multiplied by 1 to the left, which is that one, 703. And that's why it gives me this correct answer here. As I copy this down even further, then what it does, it copies 2 to the left times 1 to the left. So it's going to go 2 to the left, 1, 2, and it's going to multiply with whatever's inside 1 to the left. So this is known as relative referencing. It actually goes, when we use the cell name or the cell reference, it would actually find the direction or the path to get to that cell from where I want to put the answer. That's known as relative referencing. And we can identify relative reference because I can see here A18. When we see what an absolute reference looks like, you're going to see what I mean. So let's delete this. And now what I want to do, I want to calculate the VAT. So I want to multiply the price by 0.19 because this is 19% VAT. So to do that, I'm going to do this equals to this one multiplied, so asterisk, by this one here. Now, when I press enter and copy that down, I now have a bit of an issue. And that issue is, if I click on this one or this one, let's take the last one and click in my formula bar, I can see that it's actually using the relative reference. So this one, the first one was using, from C18, it was using A18, and that was 1, 2 to the left. So from here, I want to multiply whatever's 1, 2 to the left, which is 61, but I want to multiply that, well, from here it was 1, 2, 3 up. But as I copied this down, 1, 2, 3 up, can you see it's not using the right cell? So if I select this one and click here, you can see it's actually now using the cells. This one here is correct, A20, but C17 is wrong because it's moving down. It's using that relative reference. So for this one here, I'm going to select it. I'm going to choose C15, and I'm going to click on the button F4 on my keyboard. The function button at the top, you've got the F4 button, click on that. And that will change it to what's known as an absolute reference. Basically, this $sign means that the letter C cannot change, and this one means that the row number 15 cannot change. And we saw that before, if I click here, it actually changed from C15 to C16 and then C17. I don't want that. So from here now, because I'm going to click here, press F4, and now press enter. When I copy this down, now when I click on this last one and click on the formula bar, I can see that this one is a relative reference, that A20, you can see it doesn't have any $signs, but this one is still looking at C15. And that's important because I don't want this moving down as I copy down. Okay, so that's absolute and relative referencing. Let's have a look at the if function now. So we're going to use the if function to determine if students have done their homework, and if they have, they're going to get a bonus. Think of the if function as a coin toss, heads or tails. So how does that normally work? Well, essentially, someone says, or you want to make a decision. Let's say I don't know whether I want to go to the gym today, for example. And you can say, well, I'm a bit bored. I'm going to flip a coin. So you're going to, before you flip the coin, you're going to try and determine what that coin is going to be. And depending on if you get it right, you're going to do one thing, or if you get it wrong, you're going to do something else. That's basically the if function. So let's say if it's heads, I go to the gym. If it's not, I don't go to the gym. It's not if it's heads, I go to the gym. If it's tails, I don't go to the gym. It doesn't matter if it's tails or not. As long as it's not heads, I'm not going to the gym. And what do I mean by that? Well, it only has two sides. Well, true, but we don't actually check if it's tails. We assume if it's not heads, then it's tails. It may be that that coin landed on the edge. So what's the answer? Well, the answer is it's not heads. And if it's not heads, you're not going to the gym. Okay, and that's how you have to think about the if function as a statement. And if your statement is true, then you do one thing. If your statement is false, you do something else. So if I'm going to do this here, I've got the bonus I'm going to give to students. That's going to be a 2-point bonus if they've been doing their homework. And if they've been doing their homework, it means they've got a yes in the homework column or a no if they haven't. So basically here, I'm going to start with my if function. I'm going to go to equals to if. I'm going to open the brackets, and now I need the parameters. The first parameter I need is the logical test. And the test is, has this person been doing their homework? Well, I'm going to guess. I know I can see the value there. In fact, I'm going to black this out to make it a little bit more interesting. I'm going to say we don't know what's in here. Okay, we're going to assume we don't know what's inside A27. So I'm going to do here equals to if, and I'm going to guess, or I'm going to make a statement. If what's inside here equals to the word, let's say, yes. So that's my statement. I'm saying inside A27, inside A27, it has the word yes. Now, if I'm correct, then the answer is going to be, well, they've been doing their homework. So the answer has to be whatever they got for their grade plus a 2-point bonus, or whatever the bonus is in B24. Now, if we think already, just to save time, that later we're going to copy this formula down, we want B27, as I copy down, to go to B28, B29, B30 for the corresponding student grades here. But I don't want this cell here, B24, to move down as I'm copying. So I'm going to just select this now and just press F4 on my keyboard and then comma. Oh, my bad. So I'm going to click comma at the end. And then if it is yes, then they're going to get whatever the grade is plus whatever's inside B24. And if it's not yes, then I'm just going to assume it's a no, or it could be anything. It could be chicken. It could be absolutely anything you want. Okay. As long as it's not a yes, they're not going to get the bonus. So the answer is going to be what's inside the grade. I'm going to close the brackets and press enter. Okay. Now I'm going to copy that down like that. And if I just choose one of these and have a look here, you can see that it's using here A29. So that's moved down. It went 2 to the left. It's using the grade to either add a bonus or not, which is 1 to the left. And the bonus part, because it's an absolute value, it's still pointing to B24. Okay, so let's just make these cells back to white and see whether it's done this correctly. So here it was a yes, so they got the bonus. It was 14 plus 2 is 16. Here it was a no, so they didn't do the homework, so it remained 11. And the beautiful thing about this is if I decide to give them a 5-point bonus instead of 2, I can just change that number for 5 and the bonus is changed, and I don't have to recalculate everything manually. It does it for me. Okay, let's look at nearly the final thing that we're going to be learning today as far as functions are concerned, and this is the vertical lookup function, or the Vlookup. Now, the Vlookup function essentially does what? We have a value, we go to a table, we try to find a match of this value in this column here, and when we find the match, we get the information, or we return the information that we want. Now, in this case, this table has got 3 columns. So I can actually return either the explanation, which is way below expectations or meeting expectations, or I can return the letter grade. It's up to me. So let's see how that works. So first we write, it's actually C35. That's the cell that I'm inside. So C35 equals to, here's the function name, open brackets, and now I want to put the parameters. The first parameter is the lookup value. I'm going to use, I want to look up this value here, comma. The comma separates the parameters. Then it asks me, where is the table? Well, here's my table. Notice I'm not selecting the headings because that's not information required for the function. That's only information for me as a user to know what each column means. And again, I'm going to remember from now, because as I'm going to be copying this down to get the grade for each other student, I wanted to look at the next grade. So I'm going to want B35 to go down to B36 and then B37 for each student. So it's going to be 1 to the left each time. But I don't want the table to move down. So I'm just going to select both parts of this table, the range of the table, and press F4 on my keyboard. That's going to lock my table, comma. Now, this table has got 3 columns. So which column do I want to return as a value? So I don't want column 1, I don't want column 2, I'm going to put column 3, I want the letter grade. So I'm going to put the number 3. And then finally, do I want an exact match or approximate match? Well, what does that mean? Well, if we look at here, I'm looking for the value 68. I'm not going to find the exact value 68. So I don't want an exact match. We normally use an exact match with text. I'm going to use an approximate match. Okay, and the approximate match, you can see what that does in a second. So I'm going to put here true. And basically what that's going to do is going to take the value that I'm looking up. So in this case, 68. It's going to find in this first column the number which is closest to the value I'm looking up, but not bigger. So the closest number is actually 70, but 70 is bigger than 68. So the next one, which is closest to 68, is 50. So that's the row we're going to be looking at, because 50 is the closest value to 68, which is not bigger than 68. So this is the row it's going to use. Let's press enter. And there's my letter C grade. And now I can copy that down. If I click on one of these and click on the formula bar, I can see what it's using. You can see it's gone 1 to the left here, which is correct for Nick White, but the table has remained the same. If I wanted to return the values, these values here, let's say the text value instead of the letter grades, then I'm just going to go back to my Vlookup function, click in here, and instead of returning the value from column number 3, I'm going to return the value from column number 2. And if I copy that down now, you can see it's returning these values here. So the more columns you have in your VLOOKUP table, the more variation you have of things that you can return. Okay, the last thing that we're going to have a look at as far as functions is concerned is going to be the count functions. I've already got these in here, so I'm just going to delete these very quickly. And let's have a look at these count functions. So here I basically got test 1, test 2, test 3, and test 4. And some, for example, here you've got, who we've got? We've got Jenny here. We can see Jenny missed 1 test. And who else is Callie here has also missed 2 tests, test 1 and test 2. So if I want to, at the bottom, see how many students missed test 1, that's going to be the simple count function. I'm going to do equals to count, and then I'm going to select the range of cells that I want to count. Now, what count does, it will return from the range of cells you selected, how many of those have got a numerical value inside. So in this case, we've only got 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This one and this one is not a numerical value. It's a text value. If I wanted to count all the ones which have got something inside, for example, irrespective if it's a number or text, then I would use equals to CountA, and if I select all of these, that's going to give me the answer 7, because here it's returning all the cells that have something inside. So if I was to delete this one, that becomes a 6 because one of these is empty. This becomes a 4 because there are only 4 numerical values. So that's count and CountA. Let's put that back. And I can simply copy that over. So here I can see 6 students took this test, 6 students took this one, 5 here and 5 here. Let's get rid of this CountA. Now over here, if I want to see how many students have actually missed a test, or how many tests each student has missed, so I want to count how many times I see on this row the letter N. So for that, I'm going to use what's known as the CountIF function. So we're going to count, but we're going to give it a criteria. It's only going to count if the criteria is true. So I'm going to start off with F46 equals to CountIF. I'm going to open the bracket, sorry, and I want, first it wants my range. So I'm going to select my range of cells, this one here, comma, and then it wants my criteria. Well, the criteria is if it equals to the letter N. Now, because I'm going to type the letter N, I can't just put it like this, because it may think that's a function, it may think it's a cell reference. Because it's text, I need to put it in speech marks. So basically it's saying here, from the cells B46 to E46, count all the ones that contain the letter N. I don't need absolute references because as I'm going to copy this down, I want it to go to the next row. So I'm going to press enter, and then I'm going to select this and copy down. So I can see this student here straight away has missed 2 tests. And there they are, N and N. Okay, that's it for the basic functions. Now that we know the basic functions, I'm going to implement these in our gradebook so that we can, first of all, complete our gradebook with the totals, the bonuses, the grades, and everything else. And then we're going to convert that into a nice, dynamic, interactive dashboard. Now, the first thing, however, what I'm going to do, and this is where we're going to change things up a little bit, I'm going to select my table. So here's my table from here to here. That's basically the table of all my students, their grades, and the columns that I'm going to fill in, and the weights and the titles of each column. That's going to be my table. Why do I call it a table? Because I'm going to do this first. From here, I'm going to go to the Insert ribbon at the top, and I'm going to click on Table. Now, here it says, where is the data for your table? Well, that's the selected area. You can see the little ant line going all the way around. And it says my table has headers, and it does. You can see the first row is actually the header. So I'm going to click on OK. Now that's converted that into a table. And you're going to see why in a second. So from here now, as a table, I want to give this table a name as well, so it actually makes a little bit more sense when I'm actually going to see my formulas. So I can do that in a couple of ways. I'm going to click anywhere inside my table, and when I'm in the table design ribbon up here, it has the table name. I'm going to change that to gradebook. Now that just gives my table a name. You're going to see what that does in a second. So let's start by generating all the formulas that we've learned. I'm not going to take too long on doing this. but you will see a slight difference this time. So for the total, I want to get the total of the results of the assessments that their student has done. So for the 4 different tests or 3 tests in the exam, but I want to multiply them with the weight of each assessment. So that essentially is going to be a calculation. So in G13, I'm going to do equals the test result multiplied by the weight plus the test result of Excel multiplied by its weight plus that one times its weight and the exam, oh sorry, that one, and then plus that one times that one. Now what we can see here is this time, instead of it showing us the here, for example, the test result for Word, which is C13, instead of C13, it's actually saying at Word. And that's basically saying it's going to do this for all the entire column of Word. It's going to use the entire column of Word. And you're going to see why in a second. And it does this for all the other headings as well. What we do need to make a note of, though, these ones here, C11, D11, E11, and F11, are these cells up here. Now, as these get copied down, I don't want these to be relative references, which they currently are, because then they would move down also, and that would give you wrong results. I want to make them absolute. So I'm going to click on C11 and press F4. I'm going to press on D11 and press F4, E11, F4, and F11. And press F4, and that just makes all of those cells, those 4 cells, the weights at the top, makes them absolute references. So I'm going to press enter and look what happens now. Wow, look at that. I don't need to copy that down at all. It's automatically done it for me. And that's because it's a table. Now I want to do the bonus. Now the bonus will depend on whether the student has got less than 4 absences. That's what I've decided. So the absence column is here, and this is the bonus that they're going to get. So to do that, I'm going to use my if function. So I'm just going to zoom that in a bit more. I'm going to do equals to if. Remember, it actually means H13 equals to if. Now, if what's inside the absences is less than 4, that's what I'm deciding, comma, that's the end of that parameter. So the parameter, what should happen if it's true? Well, it's going to be whatever the total is plus whatever the bonus is up here in I1. Now, again, I already know, as I'm going to be copying this down, as it's going to copy down, I want the total for this student, Genesis here, to go down from G13 to G14 to G15. But I don't want the bonus reference to move down. So I don't want it to go from I1 to I2, I3. So I'm just going to click on I1 here, press F4 to make it absolute, comma. Now, if they don't have less than 4, that means obviously they have more than 4. So the result is going to be the total. I'm going to close the brackets and press enter. Look at that, it's filled it out for me automatically. Now, the last one is going to be the Vlookup. And basically, I want to take this value here for this student, compare it to this table, and return the result in column 2. And I want an approximate match because I'm not going to find an exact number here. So that's going to be the Vlookup. Let's just zoom that in again. Equals to Vlookup or vertical lookup. Open the brackets. The first parameter is the value I'm going to look up, comma. The next parameter is where my table is. Here it is here. And again, I'm going to think about my absolute references. As I copy this down, I want the bonus that I'm looking at, my lookup value, to go down to H14, H15, H16, but I don't want the table to move. So I'm just going to select both sides of that table there, press F4, comma, and now I want to return the answer from column 2, this column here, and I want it to be an approximate match, so I'm going to put true. Press enter, and there we go. Okay, so this is basically the functions that we've learned, but this time they've been put in a table. Next, I'm going to go to the bottom. I'm going to calculate the class maximum. So that's going to be equals to max, and I'm going to select my range of cells here from there to there, close the brackets, just bring that up, close the brackets, and press enter. I'm going to zoom that out a bit so it fits everything. Then I want the minimum, so that's going to equals to min, open the brackets. I'm going to choose the same range again. There it is, close the brackets, press enter. Here I want the average, exactly the same thing, equals to average. Open the brackets, select my range from there to there. Let's just scroll down, close the brackets, and enter. And the last one, I want the difference. Well, the difference is going to be whatever the maximum is. So it's going to be equals to, that's C I want here in C41 equals to whatever that one is, the maximum minus the minimum. So what's inside? C8 minus C39. And that gives me these class results for the assessment in Word. And if I select all 4 of these and use the fill handle, I can just drag that over to give me the results for everything else. Okay, so that's already completed. So we finished basically all the calculations and the functions that we want to put in. I'm going to do a quick bit of formatting here. I'm just going to select this here. I don't like this 0.15 and 0.2. So from the home menu up here, I can very easily click this percentages thing here. And what that will do, it will multiply that value by 100 and put the percentage sign. So it actually displays 15%. It's not incorporated within the calculation. So, all right. Now, a quick note. These values here, if I filter the table, will not change. They would always be based on this table here. If we didn't want that, then we would have to use the aggregate function. I'm not going to go into the aggregate function, but if I am going to do a tutorial on it soon. But basically what happens, even if I filter this data, let me just do a quick filter. If I just filter to show everything for, let's say, not that one, let's go by name. I just want to show, for example, these 2 students here and click OK. You can see these values here, they don't change. They're still showing the class totals. If I wanted these values now to represent only for these records here, the 2 records, then I would have to introduce the aggregate function when I was doing these functions, but we're not going to go into that today. So let's just remove that filter. Okay. Now, that's it. That's all the complicated stuff done. So let's see what else we can do now. Because we have because we have selected the range, our table, and we've converted it to a table. And here's a little trick. If you take your mouse and go to the very top left corner of the table, can you see how my mouse changes into a diagonal arrow right there? If I click now, it selects the table. Look at that, it's selected my table. Nice little trick there. So what I'm going to do now is, if you select anywhere inside your table, go to the table design ribbon at the top, and here you've got insert slicer. Now slicers are fantastic, but you can only implement them on columns. Here's what I mean. If I say insert slicer, it says, what slicer do I want to implement? And basically I've got name, absences, Word, Excel. You can see these are the headings of the columns. So I only want to filter my table based on the student name. So I'm just going to click on name. And there's my slicer. So this slicer now, I'm just going to zoom out a bit. You can see it puts it in one column. Look at that. And you can see all the names of the students. And if I click on a student now, notice you've got this little, the funnel, and you've got these 3 ticks here. So basically what this does, if I click on, say, for, or where do we go? Let's try Ernesto here. So if I click on him, it automatically filters and shows Ernesto's results only, and the class results and everything else. So this is an easy way, as we saw before, to only talk about this student. But let's make this a little bit more visual. So if I want to cancel this filter that I've got here for Ernesto, I'm just going to click on the cross, on the funnel with the cross there. I'm going to move this slicer up here. I'm going to drag it out to round about there. And now with the slicer selected, I've got the slicer ribbon available. And I can say columns, it's got 1. I'm going to increase the columns to 5. So it shows all my students. I'm just going to bring that down so I don't have that scroll bar, the vertical scroll bar. That just makes it easier for me to see all the students and just select who I want. You can see every time I choose a student, the results of the student here are displayed. They filter out. I'm going to click on the cross here. And let me just show you what else this does very quickly. So what do these 3 ticks do? If I click on that, I can do multiple selection. Can you see it's yellow now? So now whoever I tick, it removes them from that list. And you can see my table getting smaller and smaller there. Okay. And that allows me to make multiple selections and only show the results for a group of students. I don't know where this would be useful, but there you go. You can do, if this was a different type of spreadsheet, then it would be useful. But if I want to remove that filter, then I can now just simply click on this, and there we go. Now, because this thing here is yellow, there it is, this thing here is ticked, it's still in the multiple selection area. So if I remove that now and clear, now I can choose one at a time again. All right, so let's go and create the visual aspect, the visual component, which is going to be the chart. So before I create the chart, I'm going to select the parts that I want. I want to display the name, and I also want to display the results of words. So I'm going to hold the control button. I'm going to keep the control button pressed, and I'm going to select Word, Excel, up to here. I want to display those results. So I've basically done a multiple selection using the control button. Next part, I'm going to go to Insert, and I'm going to choose here, I'm going to choose a line chart. So not that one, that's a column chart. I'm going to choose a line chart. I'm going to choose this one here. Now we can see my chart. For me, the way it's done the chart now is not really useful. For me, it's got all the students at the bottom. I want to switch the data around. So I want for each student to have a separate line, instead of having the students at the bottom and having the tests indicated by lines. So I'm going to click on the chart area, go to my chart design at the top, and here I can switch the row and column. Okay, and by doing that, there you go. I now have the name of every single student here represented by a different colored line, and the categories are the actual tests. So Word, Excel, Web Design, and Exam. Now I know these names down here, it's probably doesn't help, but it will do in a second. So now when I filter and I just click on any student, have a look at this, you can see it only shows me now, there you go, already this is looking really good. So right now, Jenny here, I can see this is Jenny's word result for her test, 58. We can see that the class maximum is 97, the minimum is 25, the average is 60.5. So she's actually right on the average. Okay, and we can see this as well. If I go to the web design test, she's got 86. The class average was 61. So here she's above average. But let's say I want to also incorporate, whenever I click on a student, it shows their results, which this is a really good chart. If I just make that a bit bigger, let's have a look and see what we see here quickly. So if I was to click on Nick White here, we can see this could probably be a bit of concern, because we can see his results over time and across the board. He actually started strong and then he started going really low, deteriorating results. If we have a look at someone else, let's have a look at Jenna here. Jenna, again, this is a steady decline. Again, probably something to be a little bit concerned about. Ernesto here, very consistent across the board, but you can see, you know, the grades here are not really that good. But what I want to do, I want to put my average line in here as well, because that way it will give me an indication of where the student is and compared to the class average, instead of me having to compare the class average values here with the student grades up here. So to do this, I'm going to click on my chart. So it selects it. I'm going to right click in this blank area. I'm going to go to select data. And here I've got this button that says add, and I can add another entry. So I'm going to click on add, and it wants, first of all, it wants the series name. Where's the title? So I want to put this one here, class average. Okay, so that's in A14. And then the series value. So whatever it's got in here, I'm just going to delete that. And I'm going to tell it to plot these ones as well. So I want the class average for Word, Excel, Web Design, and Exam. And click OK. And OK. And look at that. The blue line is the class average, and the yellow line is the student that I'm looking at. I'm going to change the color of the line from blue to red so it really stands out. So I can select the color by clicking on it, clicking on that line, right clicking on it, and say outline is going to be red. Okay, so let's see what we just created. I'm going to take this filter away. This is all the students in one shot. It really doesn't give me much information here. There's just too much going on here. I can't really read much. The one thing I do notice is here that I've got from 100 to 120. That I've got this blank space here. From 0 to 20, I've got these like blank spaces. So I can actually modify that by right clicking on any number on this y-axis value. Right click. I can go to format axis, and I can set my maximum and minimum. So I'm going to set my maximum to 100 and my minimum to 20, because no student has actually got anything lower than 20. I can close that now. Just gives me a little bit more room. And now, whenever I select a student, check this out. it actually shows me the student color, the line, and we can see here that over time, this student here has gone, it was below class average, and then towards the end in the exam, went way above class average. So we can see really easily now student performance across time, across results, and we can identify where there are concerns. Who did we have here? Was it Ernesto, I think, before, which was consistent? Yeah, there it is. Look at that. So now, because I've got my average line as well as Ernesto's results, I can actually see here that although Ernesto is consistent across the board, he's consistently below average. So this is a fantastic way to create interactive grade books, or should I say dashboards in Excel, but fantastic for educators. Apart from that, the only thing that you can do now is you can give this a little bit of color. You can create some more charts if you want. That's always possible. Instead of a line chart, you can create bar charts, horizontal bar charts. You can give some formatting. I don't know, just add a little bit of color to separate sections, and that's it. You just made your first interactive dashboard. And isn't this just really fantastic and easy to use when you want to talk to parents, show a parent their child's result compared to the class average, and they can only see their child's results. And you don't have to worry about accidentally showing another student's results. You just click on their name and everything from there on is automatic. All right, I hope you've really enjoyed this. I hope you learned something new. If you have, you know the drill. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe. I'll see you again in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.